Here's the truth about property investing. It can be massively capital intensive, and it's all too easy to run out of money or to have your funds stuck in property projects and for your property business to come to a grinding halt because you're simply unable to do more deals. Your money is stuck in your deals. What if you had the skills and experience to go out there and raise private finance, JV finance for your property projects and to grow your property business exponentially? In this video, we talk to one of the UK's leading experts on raising JV finance and private investor finance, who gives you the expert tips on how to go about sourcing external finance for your property business, how to find JV partners, how to structure deals, and to continue to grow your property business. Welcome to this webinar where we're talking about expert tips in raising private finance for your property business. And we all know it's really, really easy to run out of money when you're investing in property or have your money tied up and a great deal comes along, but all of your funds are parked in another deal waiting to either be sold or released upon refinance. And so for that reason, it can be really, really important to bring in other sources of finance if we want to grow our property business and not be held up. And so my guest today is our go-to expert in raising private finance. She's going to give us the expert tips in how to go about doing this. She's raised over £7 million of private finance for her own property business and has helped other property investors, working closely with them, to raise another £40 million, maybe, and counting now, in private finance and grow their portfolios, grow their property businesses. So, without further ado, my guest today, Jackie Tomes, welcome to the webinar.
Thanks so much, and for the lovely introduction. Super excited to be sharing this today. It's so many lessons and very painful lessons along the way to what I'm going to be sharing today. So it's it's a real honor. So thank you so much for having me.
So many people actually on this, if they're already YPN Plus members, they'll be really familiar with who you are and what you do. And you and I have known each other quite a long time now, and we did an article maybe 7 or 8 years ago now. Do you think? I think it was that long ago. It was all about building a property business that you could operate from anywhere in the world, and that, you hadn't created a job that sort of tied you to a location. You could continue to do the things that you love doing and be in the places that you want to be without being, tied to this job, accidentally creating yourself another job. And it was one of the most commented pieces we've ever written by far. Because no one cares about the Lamborghini or all that stuff, really. Not really. What we actually really want is freedom. And so you're joining me from
the French Alps.
Just French Alps, where you've been.
I outlasted you.
Yeah, you did. Yeah.
Long time. Well, this is I think I've done like 35 days of skiing this year. My ski tracks tells me. This was it. Like, it was in the French Alps back in 2013 that I was like on a week of annual leave from my job in market research, getting that feeling of dread because I didn't want to go back to work on Monday. And I was like, how could I go skiing for as long as I wanted? It's been a bumpy journey to get there. But here we are, skiing for as much as I could possibly want to ski. And for me, yes, we're talking about raising finance today, but I'm really specific about how we talk about it, because I don't want to, for one, I want investors to get great results from our work with them. And I also want to make sure that we're raising finance in a way that gives these foundations of freedom. So maybe you don't want to go skiing for 35 days. Maybe that sounds like absolute hell to you, but there's other things that we do want to have freedom for in our lives. So for me, this approach that I want to talk about for raising finance makes sure that ultimately you don't turn into a finance raiser as a full-time job.
Yeah. For some people, it's going to be spending time with family or volunteering for a cause that means a lot to you, or traveling the world, or, skiing, or, it's going to be different for all of us, but actually the freedom element and the choice element is the bit that remains the same for everybody.
100%. So what I'm going to be sharing today in terms of like the approach. So this is the approach that I'm going to share is what we've done with our own investing. You know, we've done over 17 million pounds of deals. So it's been how we've managed to fund those. And it's only been my first ever deal that used my own funds. Beyond that, it's all been working with private finance. So like how we've done that and the learnings that we've had along the way from where we messed it up. And obviously watching now, like my day job, you see market research. So I'm always looking for like, what are the themes and the trends where people struggle along the way. So I've kind of used my mentoring with others to see how to improve the process, and it's pretty great. So I think for me, a lot of it, we kind of almost got to start a bit before the raising finance process to get the best results from raising finance. So that's what I want to share today. And by doing that, it's going to mean that you can do it in a way that is very replicable, that ultimately you can get people to help you in different parts of the process. Maybe you love raising finance, maybe you hate raising finance, but it means that you can hold on to the parts of it that you like, delegate others to VAs along the way, and just keep yourself doing what you ultimately really love to do. And that's where this approach really comes into its own. I'm just not going to throw out a load of like tactical tips for raising finance, because that, for me, I think if you're raising finance without the good foundations in place is where I see a lot of people get into a lot of challenges, where maybe they're raising finance without the right fundamentals for the deals, doesn't really stack up. The investors aren't really going to get their money back easily, or you're going to take on a huge financial downside yourself. So I think how you set it up, for me, those foundations are really important, which is where I want to start today.
Okay, brilliant. So, and where do we start? You know, do we start with the deal? Do we start with an investor? And what makes us investable? You know, what makes us someone that, you know, comes across as, you know, a great place to actually put our hard-earned money as an investor. So, let's start with the foundations.
Let's start with the foundation. For me, is the deal, but I think maybe not in the way that people necessarily expect, because I think first and foremost, we need to make sure that we can find good deals, and we know, because we've got the knowledge about those deals, that they are actually good. So for me, I go right back to the start. I'm very much a massive advocate of focus. Choosing what it is that you actually want to do in property, and choosing what I call your business model. A lot of people call it a property strategy, but for me, it's the model that you're going to choose to operate. So are you going to do serviced accommodation, HMOs, developments? Like, what's the thing that you're going to choose to operate? And like, there's a few different factors that feed into that. So like, what are you trying to achieve in property? What skills are you bringing to property? What can you transferably bring across? What resources do you have at your disposal that would help you to make that choice? What sort of personality have you got? Are you more of a people person, like bringing the people together and making the deals happen? Or are you more of a process, detail-oriented person? So starting to think about those things to really commit to what is the primary thing that you're going to focus on, that we're going to be raising finance for. So for us, we started out with just doing single let flats, and then that developed into buying blocks of flats, and then that's developed further. But it's always been one thing at one time, and then being very specific about what location or locations am I choosing to do that in, to be able to make sure that there is actually a good opportunity for that. There's no point choosing to do serviced accommodation for the tourist industry in an area where there's no tourists. So like, what's the area that we're choosing, and making sure that our model fits in with that, and really committing to what that's going to look like. Because as we go through the process, we want to make sure that we know that we've chosen a model that is going to be viable in the area, that there's a good opportunity for, and that when we then come into the next phase of getting down to the numbers, we can really make sure we understand the nuts and bolts of how this is going to work, because then that will ultimately protect the investors the best. So we're starting to be like, what am I actually doing in property? What kind of deals and where? Making sure I feel good about the opportunity for that. That is the first phase to raising finance, which I know is weird because it's actually nothing to do with raising finance. But when you're clear on that, then we start to feed into the next stage, which is stacking up the deal and saying, right, so I want to do HMOs in Birmingham because I think there's a really good opportunity in the student market, for example. Okay, right, let's have a look at an example deal and make sure that actually stacks. How much can you buy the right kind of property for? How much will it be worth after you've done the works? How much are the rents going to be? And really making sure that we're clear that this does actually stack up. which again is nothing to do with the raising finance. But if you don't do that part, for one, you could find it very hard to raise finance, or ultimately you raise finance and the deal doesn't have the fundamentals in place. So ultimately, we want to get to the point that we're really clear what is that criteria that we're looking for within those deals, make sure that it's really maximizing the returns of any monies that are used, and then set up a good deal analyzer that we can use in our sourcing to make sure that we're always hitting those criteria to hit those numbers. So those for me are two pieces of the puzzle: choose your model and stack the deal, that are a precursor to starting to really get into the investor side, which may seem nothing to do with it, but actually if you miss that part is where I see the most problems happen.
So do you think that this is where some people fall over when they come into property, and particularly into the world of property education, that everything sounds really exciting, and they might start with the idea of like, hey, do you know what? I want to buy a house, rent it out. And then, some months down the line, they're looking at, lease options, delayed completions, assisted sales, service accommodation, commercial to residential, any one of a million things. And actually, they know a tiny bit about each of those things, rather than saying, you know what, I got really good at doing this one thing and analyzing this particular type of deal. I know when I was starting out, they were really boring, actually, like 1-bed flats, turning them into 2-bed flats, and I got pretty decent at it. And it was, not that exciting. Other people seemed to be doing a lot more exciting things. And then I moved up to, multiple flats in blocks later on, like you, actually, very similar sort of pathway. But, I got really good at that. And, I adjusted that. Rather than this kind of running around of flower, now I need to really expert in something else. And I remember I met a guy years ago, and he branded himself as the property expert. I was like, you can't be no one can be an expert in everything. That's just not, how would that work? But that laser focus of knowing, I know this market is the place to start. Yeah.
Yeah, it really is. And I think I accidentally ended up really focused at first. So before I really did any got majorly involved in any networking or property training, I'd done one bed flat, done a refurb, and I was like, okay, that kind of worked. Let me raise finance for that, and went and agreed another 3 or 4 very quickly. And so it was accidentally focused, kind of because I didn't really realize there was all this other sexy other stuff. But as soon as I started trying to do all these, getting distracted by the sex factor of all these things that sounded way more exciting than single lets. And for one, it got my raising finance really slowed down as I tried to do too many things, because I was confused what I was doing. So I couldn't really clearly communicate that to other investors. So if they're confused, they're not going to make a choice to invest. So even though I ended up working harder, trying to get all these different things going, ultimately my progress slowed down because I was doing too many things, and actually massively increases risk as well. I remember our first ever commercial to resi conversion was 4 flats, and it was a total flop. It was awful. We didn't make any money on it. And I'm so lucky that was our first one, because it was really small comparatively. A couple of years prior, we were looking at a massive, maybe 30 unit commercial conversion that I thought I could just go out and do, having only done some small refurbs. And I was really lucky that I had a mentor who just didn't take that rubbish, basically. He was like, you could destroy yourself doing this. Why not just do more of the little 1-bed flats? There's nothing wrong with them. And it's true. I was drawn in by the fact that subconsciously, you felt those people are doing the big stuff are the cool people. You want to be the cool, sexy person doing the amazing thing, but that's really your ego talking, right? If you're like, what do I genuinely want? I just want to have a portfolio that's consistently generating me cash flow without making myself potentially bankrupt in the process. For that replicable approach, you can scale up very quickly, getting better and better every single time at what you do, minimizing the things that you don't know, which means you can do more and more. And so even though they might individually not be sexy, for me, what is sexy is living the life that you choose on your own terms, not whether the people in the world think you're cool because you're doing a big deal. And actually a lot of those big deals, a lot of challenges with them that you don't see publicly, because there's a lot of shame that goes on behind the scenes when those deals don't go right. So
look, I moved up into commercial to residential deals on listed buildings, and one of our projects spent £400,000 over budget. That even now, that number kind of makes me feel sick, that, things, the bigger the deal, the more complex it is, things get away from you. And whereas those boring one beds, that I bought 18 years ago, I've still got them. They're still rented, they're still kind of chugging away in the background and adding to them. So, mastering one thing, then that's where we start. Yeah,
mastering one thing. And I think that starts to then segue nicely into like the investable conversation, because we invest in other people's deals now as well. And for me, I would not invest with someone who wasn't consistently doing the same thing. Like, I want someone who knows what they're doing. They've got a replicable approach for doing it, that I can put my money in, and they've got a good approach to what they're doing, and they're learning every single time. And maybe they might have not done many, but the fact is they've done one, they're repeating it, they've taken the lessons from the first one, they're doing it again. And like, that de-risks so much. And I think savvy investors know, when you're doing your first deal, you're a little startup business. As you start to do your second and your third one, you're starting to mature into something that's got that track record and that history that you can leverage on. And the investor type can kind of change along the way, but that infrastructure and that intellectual property that you're creating with, this is what I do in this area for this reasons, and these are my criteria, it just makes your own special sauce for what you're doing and why, which for me makes a very investable proposition for someone, even if they're very new along the way to doing it, because it shows that they've put the thought process into knowing what they're doing and being clear about it, and then starting to think about me as the investor and how I fit into it. Just creates a lot of confidence, which kind of brings me nicely into the third part of the process, which is that investor proposition. So I've spoken about choose your business model, stack the deal. Then the investor proposition part is how you then fit in the investor into what it is that you're doing. So how are you going to structure it? Are you going to be doing loan agreements? Are you going to be doing equity with JV partnerships? And how are you going to put that together? So for example, if in your stack the deal phase, your primary approach to maximize the returns is to use bridging finance, great. That's going to mean that, for example, on a security perspective, you can't give your investors a first charge security because the bridging company is going to have that. So therefore, okay, I have the option for a second charge, but how much, what bridging companies are going to be happy with offering a second charge? Does that mean I'm paying higher interest from my bridging? Making sure that that's all factored into the numbers that you're working on. And then how much does an investor have to bring to be able to access the second charge? Because if you need 500k for a deal, probably someone who's bringing 50 isn't going to reasonably be able to access that second charge. There might be a minimum amount that someone has to bring. So it's starting to basically put the puzzle together for what it is that you're doing, what that criteria is, and then how you're starting to work with investors alongside that. What returns can you offer your investor? How does the returns on investment look after you've refinanced? Maybe you're 20% returns after refinance and you're working with loan investors. So maybe you can offer an investor a 10% return on an ongoing basis on money that's held in, because you know that you can pay them their interest and you can pay yourself the interest. So looking at those returns, and then the time frame. So how long do you need for these kind of deals? So maybe you're doing HMO conversions. So maybe you're going to need 6 to 9 months to do the work. Maybe you're going to need a few 3 to 4 months to do the refinance. How long does the loan agreement need to be able to factor in for that, for margin of safety as well? And then, of course, the exit. Are you refinancing? What happens if you can't refinance? Is there an option to sell the property? How are you ultimately going to get those funds out? Whether that's on an initial refinance, or maybe there's even a subsequent refinance to get all of your funds back out. And then, yes, of course, we've spoken about the amount of funds that are required too. So you're kind of going, okay, this is what I'm doing. That's how much money I need. That's how long it's going to take me. These are the returns that I can offer. And just figuring out what you are able to offer to pay your investors within that wider picture of what it is that you're actually focusing on doing.
Okay, and amazing advice. And I wanted to ask as well, how important you think it is to be crystal clear with your investors, saying this is the proposition. Because I've been, here's an example. Yeah, so someone came up to me at an event years and years ago, and they said, "Hey, Ant, do you know anyone with this?" I am smiling as I tell this story. Do you know anyone with £1 million to invest? And I said, yeah, probably. Yeah, I know people who's doing that sphere. And he said, well, here's the thing, that they're not allowed to know what it's for. And I said, yeah, I don't know anyone. The number of people I know that are like that as zero, definitely guaranteed. And that's an extreme example. But what I'm trying to illustrate is people can get involved in deals where they don't really understand. It can sound really complicated, and sometimes they get involved in them because the returns sound amazing and it sounds exciting or whatever. But generally speaking, from my experience, if people are comfortable when they understand the deal, they understand the risks involved, to be really clear about what that might look like. They can see that, it's a block of, of 6 1-bed flats. It's going to be converted into 6 2-bed flats, and I see what you're doing here. I understand it. I understand the time scales. You've explained to me how much it's going to cost, and all those bits involved. I'm in this deal, and I'm making the same judgment call that you're making about whether or not we do this. Is that an important element?
Yeah, I think you've summarized that really nicely. Yeah, I totally agree. I think you want people who are coming on board understanding fully what they're getting themselves in for, because there are ups and downs to property, and you want people to be in that with you. And yeah, well, I mean, for me, when I wasn't clear on what that looked like, I didn't raise finance. When I was clear on what that looked like, I did. And that for me was that main difference was, this is what I'm doing. That's what I can afford to offer. Here's how this is going to work. And I think we've kind of, in this first part of it, just talking about conceptually choosing your model, just stress testing it on some dummy deals and figuring out how those dummy deals can then work with investors. And then you're ultimately going to use that as part of your process to raising finance. So the next phase is your investor pipeline. And this is we want a multi-stage process to going through with someone who says, I'm interested to invest, to then going through step by step together to decide if they actually do want to go and invest. And we, on our side, want them to invest with us. It's a two-way street. And as part of that process, once you get to a certain point, you want to be able to show an example deal. Like, I think sometimes we can, generally the people who are going through in property, like, we're more like creative, like go-getter people. We're not often so great at the detail. But you need people to understand enough about the detail to be able to get their heads around it. So sometimes when we're kind of in the plan creation, it can get a bit too big picture in our minds. And where the rubber hits the road is, okay, we're going to buy a house. We're going to convert it into a 5-bed house. It's going to cost this much over this time frame. This is the planning side of it. And you can bring it to life with a specific opportunity. And for us doing that just slightly later along the process of that pipeline with a potential investor just really brings it to life for someone, and also helps them to understand how they're going to fit in. So say, for example, the deal requires 500k to do, and this investor's looking at maybe bringing 250 grand. They want to say, okay, so how does what I'm doing fit in with, is there going to be someone else involved? How are you fundraising the rest of it? And understanding that part of it. And when's my money required? Okay, well, maybe most of it's required for completion, but maybe some of it can be done in tranches for the refurb, depending on what that person wants. Like, as they understand a kind of a case study example of what those deals look like, they can kind of in their mind envision how that's going to work. And that, again, just helps to move that process along to someone actually investing.
Okay, but this is really interesting, because we're almost doing this kind of backwards, aren't we? Because the bit that a lot of people would say was,
where are they?
Exactly. But actually, there's no point kind of trying to attract those investors unless you're at the point where you are investable. You are presenting, something that someone's going to believe in and buy into and have trust in, and believe in the deal and believe in your ability to deliver that deal. If we're not at that point, there is no point sitting down with anybody.
No, absolutely. And I think for me, for a long time, I resisted being the person who trained others how to raise finance. Like, I just always didn't want to be that person, partly because everyone I saw who was training it was very much focused on that first part. Where do you find people? How do you network them? How do you get them to invest? And I always felt really uncomfortable with that, because I'm like, but what if the deal doesn't work? Like, if the deal doesn't stack, that investor's not getting their money back. And I'm basically giving people the tools to raise finance without the fundamentals. And so for me, I don't want to teach people to raise finance without knowing that I'm doing right by the investors that are subsequently going to invest with those people. Because if you haven't done those foundations, it might look good on the surface for a while, but there is trouble brewing underneath. So yeah, definitely I always like to just reverse engineer it. So the very last thing that you do is talk about how you're going to attract and find more investors. And I also think everyone wants there to be some like magical unicorn place where everyone's like pooping money. And that's, if you just find that place, that would be the answer to all your problems. But actually, you've already got a network of people. You're a human who's made friends throughout your life of people who know and like and trust you. And if they knew what you were up to in property and you had a nice process to take them through to talk about what you're doing and see if it's a good fit for you to work together, really gently and elegantly, like just two human beings having a conversation, you already have people who would invest with you circling around you. You're just not thinking of those people yet, or maybe you're actively thinking somehow that those people aren't good enough or the right people. But for me, the biggest, quickest win for raising finance is to start to just talk to everyone that you know about what you do. And then when someone shows interest, knowing that you've got a pipeline, a multi-stage approach to having an initial conversation, then a more extended conversation, making a plan, showing a deal, talking about how it could work, coming to an agreement, and it just going step by step. Like, it's not like if you go dating and you offered to, marry someone on the first date, they would run for the hills. It's the same with investing. Like, you just need to have that time and no pressure to go through together to make that decision. And actually, when you get that part of it right, there is money that's very easily accessible within your existing network, and it's far quicker than the piece of work that's to be done about growing the network.
So, but it is really important those people know that you're in the market, this is what you're doing, because we're in a society where people are embarrassed to talk about money. I don't know why, or business or property investing or whatever. People don't really do that quite often. So you have to kind of move outside of that comfort zone a little bit and not be embarrassed about, hey, I'm doing this for a reason. I'm doing it for, to make a better life for me or my loved ones or whatever. And I'm doing this to make money, because unfortunately that money is what we need to do those things. And that is in our day-to-day conversations and any, postings on social media, and how important is that kind of, evidencing of the life that you're kind of living to bring people in.
Yeah, it's really nice. So I guess, the first side of it, definitely everyone has to know that you're investing in property and you're working with investors. And don't just say I'm investing in property, because what does everyone think if you just say I'm investing in property?
She's loaded. Yeah.
Yeah, give us some money, Jack. So they just assume that you have loads of money. And I just got into the habit of every single conversation, taxi driver, barista in the coffee shop, whoever it is, get into a conversation and find an opportunity to tell people what you do. And everyone asks what you do. It's like the first question of any new person that you meet. Yeah, I'm a property investor. I work with people who want to invest their money hands-free and get a great return. Yeah, I absolutely love it. I'm doing these projects, this, that, and the other, and just talk excitedly about it. Like, that is, go to kids' birthday parties, school pickup, everywhere you go, just find an opportunity to share what you're doing, not in a pitchy way, just in a raising awareness that Jackie invests in property and people invest with her without having to do all the hard stuff that she's doing. So I definitely, that is such an easy win, and it takes no time, and you just do it through your life. And then, yes, 100%. And the next thing is that what you're saying is starting to then continue to build that basically credibility and social proof of what you're doing, which then for me starts to bring us into more of that ongoing attraction plan part of the process. And I think social media, as much as we all have a bit of a love-hate relationship with it, it's just such an easy way to consistently share what you're up to in property. Again, you don't want to do this in a way that looks like you're just pitching and marketing for people. There's an FCA reason that we can't do that anyway. We just want to share the journey of our life and what we're doing. Completed another deal, just had a meeting with an investor who's going to come on board for our next project. Just like sharing that journey of what you're doing that shows I'm a property investor and I work with people who want to invest their money, and finding as many different angles on that approach, using our everyday life as the fodder for that. It's just so powerful. Gives a lot of people the ick, which we'll come to in a minute with like the mindset side of it. But yes, if you can consistently do that until you're blue in the face, until you're sick of hearing yourself talk about it on social media, no one else will be, because they they don't see most of your posts. They only see a very small percentage of them. So it's just getting out of your own way to just share that. And then I think for me, as you start to then get into that phase where you're not just talking to your existing network, but you're growing your network, you need to have what networking events are you going to go to, and making sure that you're consistently going there, connecting with people, and then bring them into your fold on social media as friends so they can consistently be reminded of what you're doing. It's just a very simple approach that you can take to start to build that potential pool of people who could be investors in the future.
Okay, let's talk about this mindset thing then, because we can have a lot of reservations when it comes to raising private finance. It can feel like we're holding out the begging bowl, or even that, hey, I'm doing you a massive favor, even sitting down, whatever. It can just feel weird in these different ways. So is that what, when you've met people and you help them to raise money, their kind of endeavors up to that point, what do you think has stopped them? What do you think is, has been the reason they haven't got there without you?
The main reason, I think, when it really comes down to it, they don't believe that they are bringing enough worth. They're not bringing enough value in themselves and what they're doing, which is like a really deep-seated, am I enough? Fear that most of us have deep down, whether or not we're consciously aware of it or not. So I think if you don't truly believe that what you're doing is brilliant and is bringing great value to other people, you're not going to do it. Like, you won't go for it with volition. You'll always hold yourself back. You'll be so caught up in what you need that you won't be focusing on what the other person needs and the value that you're giving them. It's basically, you're so caught up in the fear of not being good enough that you make it somehow all about you, rather than going, you know what? Let me just listen to this person that's sitting in front of me who's like got hundreds of thousands, that's sitting in the bank, that's underperforming, and they love property and they want to get some money invested into it. Okay, how could I help this person, and how could I be of service to them? That you can only do that if you stop being so inwardly focused and worrying about yourself and if you're good enough. So it's just opening that to the world and really recognizing your value, and which kind of leads on to another point, which is therefore putting yourself out there and going for it. And not everyone's going to want to invest with you. Like, loads of people are going to say no or not be interested. Being okay with that, because just because someone says no doesn't have any impact on the fact that you are doing something great, that you are valuable, that you are worth it. And to just be confident, to just take down those knocks. I mean, if you haven't already read the book, Go for No, it's a great story that illustrates the point that the best salespeople are also the ones that get the most no's, because they're putting themselves out there. So that part of it's really important to me overall, I think. But there is always different flavors of those, I guess, limiting beliefs and that self-sabotage. And it depends on the person, how exactly that plays out, which again is for another reason for me that this is the process that we take. Choose the model, stack the deal, create the investor proposition, get the pipeline working, attraction plan, do all of that, and then see where you're not doing the thing, because that is where there is some kind of self-sabotage holding you back. Whereas if you try and ask those questions early on, it's not really clear. But you sometimes see that people aren't posting on social media. So why are you not posting on social media? Why not going to networking events? And what's the parts of the raising finance process that you know you have to do, but for some reason you're not doing it? Whatever that is, we just need to follow the route underneath that to go, what is the self-talk, the lack of belief that's holding you back from really going for it? And we all just have a slightly different flavour of that.
I think this kind of self-doubt thing, everybody feeling that, I'm not worthy enough or whatever, I don't have enough value, is something which, if we're honest, we all have. It's really, I don't know a single person who's the most successful people I know have that, it's going on. But I wanted to ask you a little bit about the, you sit down with someone, you're having a coffee, you're kind of talking about property, or maybe you're just talking at this point,
yeah.
Getting to know each other. And for everybody watching this, they will recognize that you get to a point where, we just got to have a yes or a no now, and that's it. We can't just have continual coffees for the rest of our lives, and those are very nice, but this needs to go somewhere. have you got any advice for people at that point where you say, you know what, I've got a deal, what do we do there?
So this is so set up the context of that conversation with me. That's someone that you've maybe met networking, and you're having some coffees with them, and kind of building that relationship,
or they've reached out to you, they've seen something on social media or whatever. But yeah, let's take the instance you've met someone at a networking event. They seem kind of interested in what you're doing. You've got an agenda. You've got this great project, and you'd like to invite them or someone into it to kind of benefit from it. But how do you go from this very nice conversation of having a coffee to, and now we're going to kind of, seal the deal. We're going to close this thing.
Well, for me, it's all in the questions that I ask. That's my approach anyway. So for me, I'm always just trying to find out, is there an opportunity with this person? So for example, like at a networking event, if I'm there looking to raise finance, I ideally want someone who is potentially struggling to find deals. Because I think it's a bit awkward at networking events. You're like, oh, like, do you have money? Like, you can't just go around asking people that. So it's, how do you find the potential opportunity without being a bit of a weirdo about it? So for me, it's always about asking those questions first and foremost to just see if this person is essentially someone who there could be an opportunity with, because you can't have coffees with everyone at a networking event. So for me, if I'm having a coffee with someone, it's because I've got to know them, and from having conversations, it's like, oh yeah, no, I'm really struggling to find deals would be quite a good indicator for me. Okay, so you're struggling to find deals, so does that mean that you're struggling to get some funds invested at the moment? So like just focusing on what the problem is that they're facing to getting those deals done. So I would end up at a coffee meeting with someone who is saying, I'm really struggling to find deals. And I've got some funds I want to get invested, but I'd get there through the problem that they're facing. So in that meeting, I'd always just be asking questions about what that looks like, what have they tried so far, what are they looking for, how quickly they're looking to get those funds invested, and just see if are they like in the market for investing that with someone else, and yes or no. And depending if they are interested, then I say, well, let me know if you want to have a proper conversation about how that looks, what that could look like. So I would just be I'm very soft in my approach. I would take very much a question asking approach. I'm not a hard pushy salesperson. I don't like that part of it. So for me, I would just open the door, say, oh, if you want to have a chat about that at any point, just let me know. And then if there's interest, then I would book a conversation with them that's purely about scoping out is like how that could look if we were to invest together, to make it a specific moment in time that we're going to meet up to discuss how that investment could look like, what they're specifically looking for, and how that could work together. But I'm always taking the approach of what are their problems, what are they trying to achieve, and how can I help them to achieve that within what I'm trying to do. So for me, it's just always like a soft, let me know if you're interested to have a chat about how we could work together.
Okay, brilliant advice, as always. And so we've taken care of the bit of, hey, you're going to be an expert in one particular thing in property. That's what you're going to do. You're going to tell everybody and bore yourself to death with telling everybody what you're doing. We've talked about what the conversation looks like to get someone nearer to, building that relationship and making sure you're having a conversation with the right people for the right reasons. Can we talk quickly about the how we go about putting these agreements into place, to protect everybody's interests? So that might mean understanding what we do if the deal doesn't quite pan out as we're hoping. The communication along the way, are we having kind of formal loan agreements, drawing up with solicitors? What do we do? We've got someone who wants to pull the trigger on this, and what happens next?
Yes. So for us, as part of that investor pipeline process, the result that we're looking to aim towards ourselves before we get anyone else involved is heads of terms. So for us, heads of terms is a very simple layman's document where we basically outline the plan without any legal jargon about how we're wanting to work together. Is it that you're going to loan me money? Are we going to do a joint venture? Who's going to do what? What's the time frame? So we just get clear between ourselves what it actually is that we're planning to do together. If you go to a solicitor without a clear plan of what you want, you're going to waste a lot of money. So let's at least be clear. This is what I'm trying to do with these parties over this time frame, and then we can talk about with a solicitor what those contracts look like. So the first time that we ever did it, we got contracts drawn up properly by a solicitor. A lot of the time now that we wouldn't use a solicitor anymore because we have those documents that have been created that we're kind of using again. So 2 main documents, one, actually no, maybe 3. One, a loan agreement. Very simple. Someone's going to loan you money. What are the terms of that? What's the time frame? What are the penalties? What's the security? Like just outlining all of that as part of an agreement. Then if you are doing a joint venture with someone, probably you are going to be doing that as part of a company, probably. So in which case you start to then look at, you would be shareholders in the company. So some sort of shareholders agreement. More complicated than a loan agreement. There's more nuances that you've got to figure out. And then the last one is just a joint venture agreement, which that could work in any kind of scenario where different people are coming together to do a project together, and we're going to be sharing how the money is made or the losses are shared if something didn't go to plan. So those are probably the 3 main documents that you're probably going to see. There are a few others. And so, yeah, it's kind of up to you how you do that at first, but going to a solicitor who is a specific contract solicitor who has got experience in property is really important. If you go to the wrong person, they're going to make this very complicated and probably scare everyone off. So you just want someone who's got experience in this area to just walk you through setting up those contracts in the first instance. Yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. That is spot on. I mean, what an overview of, how to start raising private finance, our expert tips from a true expert in this field. So very quickly, some definite don'ts, definitely don't do this, or things you've seen that, people have done wrong along the way. Can you think of any?
Yeah, definitely. If things are not going to go to plan, like property, there's so much out of our control. Things are going to go not how we want them to go. That is just life. So try as much as possible to plan for that with contingencies in how you do your analysis, contingencies in time frame. But invariably, sometimes even then, you're still going to struggle. What you must not do if you're struggling on a project is to stop communicating. That is probably the biggest problem that occurs time after time. Things don't go to plan. The person who's borrowed the money feels really rubbish that it hasn't gone to plan. I think a lot of the time people vilify the people where it's not going to plan because they think they're somehow being nefarious. But I think that's very rare that happens. I think most of the time there were good intentions. It didn't go to plan. That person's now full of shame and loathing of themselves that they've messed it up. So they bury their heads in the sand and run away from it all. You've got to open up at that time when it starts to happen and always be communicating. Share the bad news, share what you're going to do about it, and just keep communicating, because I think most investors are very forgiving to a point of when that happens, as long as you are showing that you are doing everything within your power, that you have a plan and you're communicating it. And I think we end up with a lot of investors who come to us not because we're perfect, because we're definitely not. Projects overrun, budgets overrun, that happens, but they will never go quiet on them. They'll always hear from us. So we end up with a lot of people who've been dissatisfied with other people in property who have done the opposite, and we're not better, we're not getting better returns than those people, maybe even we're getting worse returns than those people, but we are just consistent and reliable in that communication and that planning when it doesn't work out.
Honest, open communication. We've been in the situation where someone owes money before, and the second they go quiet is the second the alarm bell rings. Definitely, you think, just be honest with me. Just tell me how it is. So people watching this webinar may not know that you are also a successful author, Jackie. So can you tell us a little bit about your book? So it's Focus Your Way to Financial Freedom. Have I got the title right?
You added financial, but that also sounds good. Focus Your Way to Freedom. Freedom and all its stuff.
Hey, freedom, yeah. Freedom. Focus Your Way to Freedom. So, this was off the back of the really kind of, covering some of the things that we did in the article years ago, freedom being financial freedom, being freedom to be, geographically located where you want to be and doing things that you want to do. So I was at a big event last year where you had maybe a queue of 50 people lining up to
it was mad. I just launched it. It's my first ever book. I've put it off for years doing it, and I finally launched it. And yeah, it was at the Property and Entrepreneurs Summit, which is an amazing event that was I was there in 2020 4. And just had a queue of people all afternoon buying books. Like, as a first-time author, it was very, very surreal. And the feedback from it has been amazing. And I think what's different about it in property is that it's a very, what we're talking about here, honest account of the true highs and lows of investing in property, doing deals, raising finance in a way that creates freedom. And that journey of understanding what freedom really means and what really means, and realizing it wasn't really what I expected. Very honest about the challenges and the lows that we went through along the way. For me, it's really important because I felt like when I was coming through in property, just always saw pretty much the good side of property. And then when challenging stuff happened to us, I thought it was because I wasn't good enough or doing a good enough job, and it was horrible. And actually, for me, I want to be able to share those highs and lows with people so that when they go through challenges, which they invariably will, everyone does, that you don't judge yourself, you don't give up, and you just learn from it and keep going. So it's an account of our last 10-ish years of starting in properties, learning how to raise finance, and getting location freedom along the way as well.
Okay, it's an amazing read. And here's something really cool. If you're a YPN Plus member, then you can click the link here if you want to find out more about that. Then you can get a copy of Jackie's book completely free of charge, courtesy of us. And it's an integral, really, really important piece of reading there. Jackie is always honest and open about the challenges along the way, which is essential when you're starting out. It's too easy to buy into the hype of, hey, look, there's the Lamborghini or whatever, all those kind of things. So, Jackie, also no stranger to YPN Plus members because you host a number of events for us, our networking event where people can join you live and get their questions answered. You appear on numerous webinars that we run actually as our guest expert in all things raising private finance. And I know you've been a part of the sort of YPN community and now part of the YPN team for a number of years now. So if people are interested in taking the next step in property, getting a copy of Jackie's best-selling book, Focus Your Way to Freedom, Focus Your Way to Financial Freedom, as we're calling it today, then you just click on the link here. You will get your monthly magazine either posted or in digital format to you every month. That's full of property investor stories, case studies, real-life deals. People like myself and Jackie, real-life property investors sharing successes and the mistakes that we make along the way. It's also full of property specialists like my property tax accountant, our planning consultants, our legal experts on all things tenancy, tenant law. You also get to join our Monday webinars. We have a live webinar for YPN Plus members every Monday, from everything from networking with Jackie to live deal clinics where you can get your deal assessed by a panel of experienced property investors and developers, through to property finance and tax webinars where we drag on our tax accountant. You can ask them any questions that you might have. They cover different topics every week. All of those are loaded onto the app as well. So if you can't join live, you can play catch up later on. And as one final thing, we also have over 12 hours worth of training in buy, refurb, refinance. So if you are starting out with a pot of money and you want to turn it into multiple properties, or a pot of someone else's money and you want to turn it into multiple properties, it's essential to learn how to buy, add massive value to that property, and then be able to refinance, get that money back out, as much of that money back out as possible, and then go again. It's the only way to sustainably build a profitable property portfolio without having had billions of pounds in the bank to start with, which, let's be honest, most of us don't. So the really cool bit is that you can get your first 28 days completely free of charge on us. It's a free 28-day free trial. If you love what we do, you can access the app immediately. You can join the Monday webinars. You can get your magazine free in the first 28 days. If you love what we do, it's £23.95 per month thereafter. And I think I was in the Alps last week, Jackie. I think that's about the cost of a burger and maybe a Coke.
Yeah, if you're lucky, basically.
Really fast. So,
I think it's amazing, and what you're saying here, like what's on offer with YPN, and for me, like from my perspective, from a source to trust in the industry, like YPN. I just like I read the magazine myself when I was just getting going, and you were just an amazing trusted source of knowledge. And then as I've got closer to working with you guys as the years have gone along, it's like it's just as good behind the scenes, and the ethics that you guys operate with and how stringent you are and the people that you work with and how you treat your customers is absolutely amazing. And I do think that anyone who's in the UK property market should definitely be closely associated with you guys as just someone who's a good force to be reckoned with in the property investment world.
Okay, well, lovely words to end on as well. And a massive thanks to from me and everybody joining on this webinar and watching this today and learning the expert tips in how to raise property finance. And we look forward to seeing you on more of the YPN Plus members webinars and catching you soon. Thank you.